look at how to create a data table in our notebook as well as in Google Docs. So let's get started. There are some things that are just better for you to want to know or need to know before trying to create the data table. Just makes your life easier than trying to figure things out while trying to produce the table. So you first want to make sure that you've identified your independent and your dependent variable. Then would be nice to know how many numbers of trials you're going to run, because that will also determine the size of the table that you will need, as well as the number of data points that you are going to be recording. So now let's look at the rules for creating a data table. Now in your data table, you will always have your two columns. On the left-hand side, you will create a column to represent your independent variable. At the top of that column, you're going to make sure that you include a column title. So here you will place the independent variable as a title. In the right-hand column, you will have the dependent variable. So here we can see that I have labeled my column header with the dependent variable. Now, if you only have one trial, it will simply be two columns. However, if you have multiple trials where you're collecting data, you will want to divide that right-hand column or the column of your dependent variable into the number of trials that you will be recording. So as you can see here, with this example, we were running 3 different trials with 3 different plants. So I have divided my right-hand column into 3 separate columns for each one of my trials. So remembering that our left-hand column always includes our independent variable, the right-hand column always includes the dependent variable, to make sure that we include column headers, and we can divide that right-hand column into the number of trials that we're going to run. Now, once we have determined that independent and dependent variable, we should also make a title for our table. So the title for our table should always be in the format effect of independent variable on dependent variable. So if we see here, the effect of the amount watered, which is my independent variable, on plant height, which is my dependent variable.
Now let's look at how to create a data table in our notebook. So knowing the rules of how to create data tables, I know that I need to first identify my independent and dependent variables. If we look at this example of increasing the amount of blood in the water affecting the number of sharks in the area, I can determine the amount of blood in the water is my independent variable and the number of sharks is my dependent variable. Remembering the rules of my data table, I know that I need to create a column on the left for my independent variable and a column on the right for my dependent variable. So let's look at what that would look like here. So if you recall in our video, I mentioned that it's good to know the number of trials that you have as well as the number of data points. That is simply so that you can determine how large or how many lines you should include in your data table. So as you can see here that we have 3 data points. So I have drawn a line here using a straight edge and the margin line that will allow me 2 lines for my title and 2 lines for each of my data sets. Now, all you need to do is simply draw using the straight edge and the lines in your notebook the shape of a data table, which is a rectangle. Once the shape is drawn, you can then go in and create your columns and your rows. So in this case, I don't have multiple trials, so I know that I only need my 2 columns, one for my independent and one for my dependent. For that reason, I'm just gonna go ahead and eyeball it and cut it just about in half. Again, I'm gonna use my straight edge to make sure that my data table is as neat as possible. As you can see, it's not perfect, but that doesn't matter. Now, I skipped 2 lines per row that I'm going to need. You could do 1, but that would make it kind of small, and I know some of you have larger handwriting. So again, that is up to you, but I did leave enough space for 2 rows for each. I'm then gonna simply go in and create my lines
for each of the rows that I need in my table. Now, as you can see, I now have the outline of a data table.
All I need to do now is fill in the data table with my column headers and my data. So reminding again that the left-hand column represents my independent variable. I know that my independent variable in this example is amount of blood in the water. So there, I am simply going to label amount of blood in water. My dependent variable in this example is the number of sharks. So I am simply going to create a column header there of that variable number of sharks. Then all we would need to do is fill in our data in the appropriate column.
Here I see that my amount of blood is in gallons, so I'll go ahead and fill in that unit. Here I have 10 gallons of blood, 5 sharks, 100 gallons of blood, there are 50 sharks, and when there's 500 gallons of blood, there are 250 sharks.
The last thing that we need for our table is a title. Now you could start at the beginning writing your title, or you could do it at the end, it's up to you. But I know that my title should be the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. So my title is simply the effect of amount, I'm going to shorthand this, of blood in water on number of sharks. And there we have a complete data table.
So now that we know the rules for creating data tables, let's look at how we can create a data table within Google Docs. So I'm going to create a table for this example here to show us how it's done. So the first thing that you want to know before you go to create your table is how many rows and columns you will need in your table. You're then going to go up to the left-hand corner here and select Insert. The second option under Insert will say Table. And as you see, it will open up this square that will allow you to select the number of columns and rows that your table should include. In the case of this example, I know that I need a 2-column table with 4 rows. I need 1 row for my column headings, and then I need 3 additional rows for my data. You will then, once you have it highlighted in blue here, simply click, and as you see, Google Docs will go ahead and insert that table for you. All you'll need to do from there is go ahead and fill in your table with the appropriate headings and data. Now that I've filled in my data, there's one other thing that I want you to see here. What if you're running your experiment and you see that you have missed a row? You need 1 more row to fill in some additional data. Let me show you how you can add rows to your data table. Now, depending on where you want to add the row, let's assume I want to add it between the 100 and the 500 gallons. You will come to the row that you want to add in between and right-click. We'll then open all these options for you where you can choose Insert Row Above or Insert Row Below. So if I'm in the 100 gallon and I want it to be between 100 and 500 gallons, I would select Insert Row Below. And it will insert another row there for you to fill in additional data.